Good morning, I'm TJ Nagel, board certified master arborist and production manager for Russell Tree Experts.
Hi, I'm Mike McKee, a certified arborist, also a regional manager with Russell Tree Experts.
And today we're going to plant a balled-and-burlapped ginkgo as a donation for one of our employees. So to plant a balled-and-burlapped tree, we brought shovels, a mattock, a soil knife for exposing the flare, bolt cutters for removing a portion of the wire basket. We've got some high quality manure compost here and pine bark mulch, as well as some water and a watering bucket to water the tree after we've installed it, and a deer fence to put around the trunk at the end. We've also brought a tarp to put the backfill from the hole onto it. Makes it kind of easier to get it back in afterwards and easier to mix the compost in with the soil. And then obviously we need the tree. A lot of the tree preservation and plant healthcare work that we do is a result of trees not being planted properly.
Yeah, one of my biggest problems that I see when we go out on a site, somebody will call about a tree struggling or something like that, and the first thing I look at is how deep the tree was planted, because 90% of the time that is the problem with the tree. When a tree is planted too deep, it does not get the moisture it needs or the oxygen it needs. It needs water and oxygen just like we do.
So we decided to plant a ginkgo for this project. Ginkgo is a great tree. It's got no known pest or disease problems. It's drought tolerant and can grow in a wide range of soil structures and soil pH, so I think it's going to be a great tree for this site. This is somewhat of a native area here. We're in full sun, and we've planted a cultivated variety of ginkgo called Princeton Century, which is a little bit narrower than the straight species because we are boxed in here somewhat between high voltage utilities and other existing trees. We've also chosen mid-October for this planting, which is one of the best times to plant a new tree. In the fall, days are getting shorter, temperatures are getting cooler, there's more moisture in the soil, trees are beginning to go dormant, so it's just a less stressful time of year to plant a new tree, and it gives them all fall and winter to start establishing their roots before the stress of the summer next year. Before we plant the tree, we're going to go ahead and prune out any crossing, broken, or minor dead limbs that are in the canopy. If a tree can only be pruned one time in its life, you want to do that at planting to develop good structure. So what Mike's doing here is pruning out crossing, broken, and any dead limbs that we see in the canopy. Let's cut it back to this upright.
Okay. This is kind of an interior limb that's going to be crossing and become a problem at some point, so we'll probably go ahead and take that out now. And I want to cut back to the branch collar. Take that out of there. We have a limb up above here and one below. This one is in the middle. It's going to be a little crowded, so we're going to take that one back to the lateral right there. And that'll kind of create a little better spacing for the branches there. Okay, well, we got two branches occupying the same space right here. So we want to take out the one that's going to create the best spacing, which is going to be the center one. Take that back to the branch collar. Now we have better spacing here. And maybe a dead tip right here. I'll get that out of there. You know, we don't want to over prune when we're planting, but we want to get rid of as many of the ones that are definitely going to be a problem in the future. Okay, I was just doing a little practice here that we do to kind of determine how deep to dig the hole for the tree. And what we want to do is find out where the tree roots flare off of the trunk. And I can do that by feeling down in the dirt here, and I can determine that it's about 2 inches below the root ball here. So that's going to be somewhere down in here on the shovel. So that's the guide I'm going to use as to how deep to make the hole, because we want that root flare to be at the surface when we put the tree in the hole. And typically we want to make the hole about 2 to 2.5 times the diameter of the root ball, which this root ball is a 24-inch root ball. So we're going to try to be at least 48 inches wide on our hole.
The soil is really dry and compacted. We're going to try to break it up here with the mattock.
Nasty stuff. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over the hole. We laid a shovel over the hole to see where we're at. And see, we're right at that point to the top of the hole right now. That's where we want the root flare to be. So that's how we're checking the hole to make sure we have it deep enough and that we're not planting too deep. The next thing that I always like to do is make sure the tree is setting as straight as possible by itself without propping it with material or anything. And that's pretty close, but you want to look at it from every direction to make sure your trunk's straight.
So now we're going to add a little bit of backfill to try to stabilize the tree and root ball before we make any more adjustments to the root ball itself.
I always like to tamp in this first 6 to 8 inches of backfill. It kind of helps stabilize the root ball. Keeps it from moving once you take the burlap and the basket off.
So now we're going to remove the twine that's tight around the trunk of the tree. We want to remove this so that the trunk isn't girdled as it expands in diameter over the next couple of seasons. So now we're going to remove the burlap around the top portions of the root ball. It's important that there is no exposed burlap above grade because the burlap can actually act like a wick and take moisture away from the root ball. It also can restrict organic matter from getting down to the soil. This does degrade over time, but we're going to remove it now to the benefit of the tree.
Nice tool I found to be handy for this. It's typically used for cutting shingles, but it works really well for this because you don't dull your blade. And you're less chance of cutting yourself too.
So now Mike is removing the excess soil above the root flare of the tree so that it's not planted too deep.
Actually, the burlap was up to here, so this tree was 3 to 4 inches deep in the root ball. So if you don't check that out before you plant the tree, you're almost always going to be too deep. So I'm starting to see some root flare here. So that's probably going to be a pretty good height.
So now Mike is removing the top third of the wire cage. There's been a lot of debate and discussion about this amongst nurserymen, master gardeners, and arborists. Some folks like to remove the entire basket when possible. That's not my recommendation. A lot of times a root ball will be a fine mix of sand and peat moss and can fall apart easily, and so one purpose of the basket and cage is to hold the root ball together. So we want to leave the lower 2/3 intact to hold that root ball together. However, we also want to remove the top third so that we don't have to worry about the buttress roots being girdled by the wire, and so that it's not sticking up above ground. So now I'm going to add this compost manure mix to the existing native soil that was here. And we'll mix these in together. So we're adding this compost and mixing it in with the native soil to improve the overall structure and nutrient availability. And now we're going to put this mix of compost, manure, and original backfill back in the hole around the root ball.
All right, I'm going to go around. We filled it about 3/4 of the way. I'm just going to compact it as much as I can with my weight, just to get rid of air pockets. And we don't want air pockets that can dry out the roots really quick. We'll do that, and then we'll top it off. And remember, we don't want to put anything back on top of the root ball because that's what we want to be at the surface. And at the most, we're going to put 1 to 2 inches of mulch around the root flare of the trunk once completed.
Okay, so now we're going to add a 1 to 2 inch layer of pine bark mulch to the top of this. I'm going to spread it out here. And mulch is one of the most important final steps for tree planting, regardless of whether it's balled and burlapped or container. Mulch does a great job of helping retain moisture, regulating soil temperatures, reducing compaction, and adding nutrients to the soil. And I think mulch is one of the most misunderstood parts of tree planting. The way that I'm applying mulch right now is how a mulch ring should look. It should have a berm that's a little bit wider around the edges that directs water towards the tree. I think a lot of folks, if they looked outside right now at their trees, they would see some sort of mulching that looked almost like a gumdrop or a volcano coming away from the tree. That really is a problem for a couple of reasons. One, that directs water away from the tree, right? It also will encourage the formation of stem girdling roots. When a tree trunk is covered by organic material, dormant buds will push out roots, and those roots will start to grow in a circle around that excess mulch. So we don't want to have a lot of mulch around the tree trunk. We want to have not more than 1 or 2 inches, and again, we want to have it set up in a way that's directing water towards the stem and towards the root ball. So now we're going to water the tree in. My favorite way to deliver water to a newly planted tree is slowly. So I'm going to pour the water into this watering bucket. And there are 2 holes at the bottom that will release water slowly. For more information on tree watering, check out my video on how to water a tree. The last tree that was planted in this location was actually killed by a deer. So we're going to put a 4-foot fence around this tree to keep that from happening. A lot of times during the fall, the bucks like to rub their antlers on small diameter trees. So this will keep them from being able to get up close. And I'm going to wire this shut so that it can't open. And this will stay on through the next 2 or 3 years, and maybe longer every fall when deer begin to mate. So here it is, our newly planted balled and burlapped ginkgo, complete with deer protective fencing and watering bucket. It's mid-October, and this tree should be watered about once a week with approximately 10 gallons or 2 of these buckets until the weather gets consistently below freezing. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information, check the link to our article down below.